What makes a bad movie? You might think it's pretty obvious. The movie is bad.
Somehow Palpatine.
And while yes, bad movies are typically bad, I feel like the definition of bad movie has sort of changed in recent years. You may be thinking, how? In what way? And honestly, it's kind of hard to explain. First things first, whether a movie is bad or not is a matter of opinion. You may hate some movie that someone else loves, and you are both right in your own way. Of course, there are some movies that are just made incorrectly, and they just break the rules of filmmaking, so they end up being a mess to practically everyone.
Talking to a plastic plant. I'm still doing it.
I think Batman v Superman is a terrible movie, but it has a lot of fans, so who am I to tell them that they're wrong? I just don't agree with them, and that's fine. But seriously, this movie is so bad, I cannot understand why any- Let's look at an example of what I'm talking about. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is often considered to be a bad movie, even one of the worst in the entire MCU. But why? I think this movie is actually really fun and creative. It's very interesting and actually one of the better MCU movies in my book. How exactly is it bad? Is the camera work bad? No. Are the effects bad? Not really. Does the plot make no sense? No, I think it all adds up in the end. Is the acting bad? Again, no. The acting is all at least serviceable. So what about it is bad? Oh, that. People hate this movie because they killed off the Illuminati. They hate it because the cameos they wanted didn't happen. They hate it because Wanda is the villain. And listen, none of this is enough to make a movie bad. Like, you can disagree with how some characters were changed, handled, or left out, but that doesn't mean it's okay to go on Metacritic and give this movie a 0. That's honestly just childish. Being angry about surface-level things like this doesn't make a movie bad. And be honest, you don't actually think the movie is bad, you're just angry because an alternative version of Mr. Fantastic got turned into string cheese. Getting mad that the Illuminati was killed so you call the whole movie bad is just especially annoying to me. This isn't our Mr. Fantastic. This isn't our Black Bolt. This isn't our Professor X. Is this Brie Larson? Is this Chris Evans? Unless Captain America became a British woman and somehow I just didn't notice. Why do you care so much that these nothing characters were killed off? We were never going to see these people again anyway. Why does Black Bolt scream and blow his head up? What, did you expect him to just off Wanda by himself? Wanda is the main threat. Did you just expect characters from an alternative universe to beat the main villain, while our titular character hangs around and does nothing? No? Then what's the alternative? She knocks them out, she leaves them alone. We're never gonna see them again either way, so what's the difference? It's not disrespectful to the characters either. Characters like this die in comics all the time. Is every comic book death disrespectful? No. This does not make the movie bad. It just comes off as you being a spoiled brat whose toys got taken away and now you're throwing a fit. The same goes for people who say the movie is bad because the cameos they wanted didn't show up. Nobody told you that Hugh Jackman's Wolverine was gonna show up. What made you truly think that Nick Cage's Ghost Rider was gonna appear in this movie? Or Ben Affleck's Daredevil? Or Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man? Again, would you have called No Way Home a bad movie if Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire didn't show up? If your answer is yes, then you might be stupid. Cameos don't make a movie good. Returning actors and catering to your nostalgia does not make a movie good. Yeah, of course, all of this can definitely enhance the experience. No Way Home wouldn't be as exciting without Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield in it. But if your definition of a good movie is that they catered to your nostalgia or that they didn't kill off cameo characters, that is just so stupid. Probably even more infuriating than that is the way the Zack Snyder fandom in particular determines whether a movie is good or bad. Box office earnings. The amount of money a movie makes has never and will never determine its quality. This goes for everything. Games, music, whatever. Pixels made more money than Hereditary. Is Pixels all of a sudden a better movie?
Somebody's more important.
And I know why people say this. They want Zack Snyder to come back to making DC movies, and they try to justify this by labeling almost every DC movie that isn't made by Snyder a flop. Probably the biggest example of this is James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. This movie only made $168 million at the box office against a budget of $185 million, which, yes, technically makes it a box office flop. However, they compare the box office results of this movie to that of Man of Steel or Batman v Superman. Can't imagine why, and this is just a ridiculous comparison, because Man of Steel and Batman v Superman came out in 2013 and 2016 respectively. The Suicide Squad came out in August of 2021, and I don't know if you remember, but people weren't going to the theaters as much. So that's why The Suicide Squad also released on HBO Max alongside the theatrical release. So is it really a flop? Well, the Snyderbots don't want you to know this, but The Suicide Squad had the best opening viewership for a DC movie on HBO Max. Yes, above Zack Snyder's Justice League. And this is a very rated R movie that is a sequel to one of the worst received comic book movies of all time. And don't even try to tell me that this isn't a fair comparison. Zack Snyder's Justice League is an R-rated movie that is an alternative cut to one of the worst received comic book movies of all time. So if you call The Suicide Squad a flop, then you have to do the same for Zack Snyder's Justice League. And if being a flop makes a movie bad, then you, by your own logic, believe both of these movies are bad. I'm gonna go ahead and assume that you don't think that, and if you still think that The Suicide Squad is a bad movie because it didn't have a super successful box office result, but you still think that Zack Snyder's Justice League is a masterpiece, then you're just a hypocrite. The last thing I want to talk about is the revisionists. These guys, terrifying. Remember Thor: The Dark World? Everyone basically agreed that it is a bad movie. The general consensus was that it was the weakest MCU movie up to that point, and that mentality was kept up for years. And then Love and Thunder happened. Look, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that Love and Thunder is an amazing movie by any means, okay? I know it's not very good, so let's just get that out of the way. I don't like Screaming Goats, just like you probably don't like them either. But just because you don't like Love and Thunder, that doesn't mean you now have to pretend that The Dark World was this masterpiece the whole time. It doesn't mean you now have to pretend Ragnarok is bad because it has a similar tone. That's just stupid. I'm not saying you can't change your opinion on things over time, but to artificially change it to stick it to another movie is just crazy. It's like you really loved The Batman, but now you pretend The Dark Knight was a bad movie the whole time. Or you hated The Batman, so you pretend Batman and Robin was secretly genius the whole time. Form your own opinions. Don't be a revisionist to be different. That's just so lame. As usual, I'm rambling, but that's the name of the game, baby. That's that ADHD hard at work. But in conclusion, make fun of bad movies, but make sure you actually think the movie is bad. Don't let fandoms, weird conspiracies, box office results, Rotten Tomatoes scores, or nostalgia pick your opinions for you. That's your job. Also, Batman v Superman sucks.